Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. Time for another edition of Longhorn Weekly. This one brought to you by Allegiant Digital Marketing. We'll tell you more about Allegiant Digital here later in the show. CJ, recruiting is hot right now, so let's start there. Last visit weekend for the Longhorns has wrapped up. Everybody's decompressing from that, but a quick turnaround because there are some massive recruiting decisions really over the next couple of weeks, but starting this week. CJ, what's on the docket? And I know it's going to start Thursday at a position where a lot of Longhorn fans have their eyes right now, given how things have developed in recruiting of late.
Yeah, only 1 week left in the month of June, and there are 4 big-time decisions still to come in the month of June. That's, of course, starting on Thursday, June 26th with the Xavier Crowell. I'm not sure if it necessarily is going to dictate what happens with that recruitment, but Alabama just flipped a running back from Illinois early Monday morning as well. So worth monitoring what's going on beyond just the realms of Texas recruiting. Of course, Texas and running back recruiting kind of on a limb right now, but that's a big recruitment that will be making its final decision on Thursday. And then Friday, you have Malachi Lee, the big 6'7", 320-pound offensive lineman out of Hawaii, making a decision. That's down to Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and Michigan. Chase Calicut, the defensive back out of North Shore, who was on campus this past weekend, will be making his decision on Friday as well. And then on June 29th, you have the 5-star linebacker out of Gainesville, Georgia, Xavier Griffin, set to make his decision as well, Jeff. So, look, Texas had a bit of a surprise on Sunday with the recruitment and commitment of Richard Wesley. Can they carry on that momentum into the end of June? We'll see. But right now, 4 opportunities for the Longhorns at bat right now. We'll see what they're able to land.
CJ, you also had Keawe Brown, the two-way defensive end tight end out of Corona Centennial. He's probably going to make a move here in the next week to 10 days with his recruitment in terms of where he goes. Texas, I think, has to like where they stand with him. John Turntine's going to announce on July 4th. Caden Finley on July 4th. I know Jaden Lott on July 8th. Kendall Graville on July 2nd. CJ, when Texas gets through this wave of late June, early July announcements, where do you think this class is going to stack up? What do you think Texas fans will be happy to hang their hat on with where this class stands after when the dust settles from this?
Yeah, I think top 3 is going to be kind of that floor. And when you look at it from a holistic view, I think going into July, you're going to feel pretty good, right? You're at 15 right now. You could get up to 19 if you go 100% through June. I'm not sure if that's necessarily going to be the expectation, but you feel good. I think you're a little bit ahead of where you were a year ago, and I think you're still on some of those big-time national guys as you were a year ago when you landed the number 1 overall class. Does that mean that you're going to end up there again? Probably not, but let's look at it, right? You're in on 2 5-star linebackers, 2 offensive linemen, really 3 that are top 50 in the country. Plenty still to go for the Longhorns. A top 100 wide receiver will make his decision July 4th, and Caden Finley. I think Texas is in a very healthy spot, and that doesn't include a Trenton Henderson, who we just mentioned. You know, a number of guys on that defensive front 7 who Texas has been recruiting very heavily as of late. We've talked about it. That defensive front, Jeff, it's as good as I've seen in my recruiting time, and I think Texas has continued to prioritize those guys from the Deep South, SEC country, and it's starting to pay off. So I'm thinking when it's all said and done and the dust settles, the top 3 class, probably top 2 in my eyes, is where this class will finish.
The defensive line is fascinating because at this point, if you're Sark, if you're PK, if you're Kenny Baker, who of those guys are you telling no to?
Yeah,
James Johnson, Kendall Graville, Damari Simeon, if all of those guys want to come to Texas, I don't see them turning any of them down, CJ, and maybe they'll let things play out after that. But this could be a truly program shifting defensive line class, similar to what the offensive line class was in 2022. The 2026 defensive line class could be every bit of that. And we're not even talking about the edge where Texas gets the surprise commitment from Richard Wesley, Trenton Henderson, which those guys are different types of edge guys. So in theory, you can have a class with both of them. I want to go to the offensive line real quick, CJ, before we transition. And I put you on the spot over the weekend when we looked at the wide receiver position. I asked you, does Texas get one of Caden Finley or Jaden Lott, both or neither? So I'll ask you again, with these 3 big-time offensive tackles, John Turntine, Felix Ojo, Malachi Lee. Does Texas get all three of them? Does Texas get one of the three, two of the three, or none of the three? Which is most likely to happen in your opinion?
They'll land two. I feel pretty comfortable saying two. Now, which of the two I think might actually depend on what Malachi Lee decides on with his decision coming up June 27th. But look, I think you feel great about John Turntine. And I know A&M is making a push. A&M doesn't want Texas to be able to come out with the top guys in the state of Texas once again. And look, Texas A&M isn't in the running for Felix Ojo, right? You know, I think that's really pretty telling on where they decided to put all their chips in the basket for 2026. But Turntine's been to Texas more than just about any school in the country. Of course, just got the last visit to Austin on June 20th as well. And look, priority for his recruitment is going to be education, becoming a doctor, pursuing a career after football in the health field. Texas has a pretty good medical school, as we all have come to know, Jeff. So Michigan's becoming a sneaky school, of course. Michigan's also in a lot of these recruitments. Ojo, Turntine, Crimp, and Malachi Lee. When do they make a big push for one of these guys? Because it's coming. They have to find protection for their five-star Bryce Underwood from a year ago. That's been one of the main themes that I've been trying to uncover over the last few weeks. But I think Texas feels good about John Turntine. And looking back, I'd just be a little bit surprised if Felix Ojo ended up elsewhere away from Texas, considering his final schools and proximity ending up being a factor as this decision comes closer and closer.
No doubt, CJ. Let's transition and talk some team. You had some nuggets on the message board at ontexasfootball.com late in the week. We talked about some of those over the weekend as far as the wide receiver position goes, but I want to talk about the running back position because CJ Baxter is back working out, but you went into some detail. He's not quite 100%, and I think it's worth repeating, CJ. This isn't just wasn't just, hey, he tore a ligament in his knee. This was 3 ligaments, the LCL, the PCL, and the ACL in his right knee, all sustained some form of damage. This was a major knee injury he's trying to recover from. I just think it's worth repeating for 2 reasons. 1, I think the staff wants to be extra careful with him in his return. 2, I don't want fan expectations to get too out of whack, thinking he's going to be the CJ Baxter he was before the injury come the Ohio State game. I just think CJ, everybody just needs to take it slow and let this rehab process run its course because it's going to be probably a minute before we see CJ Baxter as we knew him before the injury back on the field.
Yeah, I think you laid it out there perfectly, right? Just take it slow. Let him literally go step by step in his recovery here, right? And that's a significant injury. And we've talked about it since the injury happened, what that timeline might look like. Look, you want him running again by June. You want him inching closer to a full recovery by August. Will that be the case? Well, he's taking baby steps to get there, right? He's getting work in the sand during summer conditioning while the team is out there running, doing, sand drills as well. So that's a great sign. I think sand is right now where you're going to see a lot of them. Of course, a little less stress on the knee as a result of not necessarily being on that hard turf. But moving forward, what's the expectation for the season? You're going to have to inch him in, right? That's the expectation. I do think he's still a bit of a ways away. And again, it is very much a positive that perhaps he's catching some passes on the side of 7-on-7. I mentioned the sand work. But to ask him to go out there and get 10 to 15 carries against an Ohio State or even a Sam Houston State, I think right now is a little bit of a tall task. So, yes, inching closer, but yes, sideline expectations are remaining a bit under wraps right now for me and CJ Baxter.
Just tempering expectations, I think, is important there. Just let it run its course, like I said. CJ, I'm fascinated by Arch Manning's leadership for a couple of reasons. Chief among them, Steve Sarkisian made it pretty clear last year that the 2024 Texas team, that was Quinn Ewers' team, and Quinn had earned the right to be the quarterback and be the leader of that team. Consequently, 2025 is Arch's team, CJ, and from what you've heard from a leadership standpoint, it sounds like he is taking that every bit as serious as he can as this team goes through summer workouts.
Yeah, this is the expectation for Arch, right? We've waited the 2 years for him to become the guy in the University of Texas locker room, and now that it's here, I don't think it's disappointed yet. Just being one of those guys to organize throwing sessions, to get guys ready to roll for off-season conditioning workouts, You talk about accountability. I know that Texas has a great culture in place, headlined by Michael Taft and his return on the defensive side of the ball. Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons, they're setting the tone. I'll even throw Trey Moore into that conversation. Offensively, with how new this unit is, with how many brand new faces are stepping up into key roles this fall, you're going to need a guy who's been around the block, played some time, but more than that, leads by example. And that right now is Arch Manning going about it the right way. And fortunately for Texas, they have a number of guys who will set aside ego, will set aside their pride, and make sure that they're doing it for the good of the team. Trey Wisner encapsulates that perfectly, right? Cole Hudson moving to the inside from that right guard spot. And then you look at Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore. I think those two guys do it the right way as well, but it's all starting with Arch Manning. And again, the expectations, Jeff, I don't know if they could be any higher for this fall.
All right, CJ, I've got one more thing I want to run by you on football off season. But before we do that, let's shout out our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football, this edition of Longhorn Weekly. It's Allegiant Digital Marketing. Are you a business owner who struggles with the following? Finding new customers, consistent leads, finding marketing services to promote your business that actually work? Well, founder and CEO Chad Markham with Allegiant Digital Marketing, it's an Austin-based advertising agency, has helped thousands of business owners just like you for over 25 years conquer these same challenges. So if you're ready to start making money in your business and grow with confidence, visit allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball and get a free marketing plan. Plus, you can save up to $2,500 in advertising with our Hook 'em Horn special today. Again, that's Allegiant with an A, allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball and get a free marketing plan. Plus, with their Hook 'em Horn special, you can save up to $2,500 in advertising. And we want to thank Chad Markham and Allegiant Digital Marketing for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football and Longhorn Weekly. CJ, as we transition back into talking about the team, I'll just ask you one question. Why are you so bullish on Wardell Mack in 2025?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair question, right? Texas has a lot of talent in its secondary. We've heard a lot of great things about Wardell Mack in that star position, and I think he provides a little bit more of a frame and perhaps a little bit more of a trigger at that star spot than what others on the roster provide. And what I mean by that is, look, in 2023, when Jahdae Barron really started to make a name for himself in this Texas defense, it was all around the line of scrimmage, right? We talk about his coverage 2024 as an outside cornerback. That's great. But all of that really started with the instincts and his ability to come downhill and make plays by the line of scrimmage. I think Wardell Mack provides that. Of course, he's around 210 pounds at the moment per the Texas roster. That's a big body playing cornerback, playing nickel in that Texas front. So I think right now that you're providing a guy, or you have a guy that is able to play the pass, play the run, and is quick enough and instinctual enough to come up and make big plays by the line of scrimmage. That's why I'm bullish on Wardell Mack. Folks in Austin and folks in New Orleans have both reiterated that over the last 6 or 7 months or so.
All right, CJ, let's move on to the Diamond, both softball and baseball. What's going on over at McCombs, coming off of a national championship, and at Dish Falk, coming off of an SEC regular season championship. The portal, it's real easy to talk about softball because we knew Mike White and company were going to be really selective, and they were. They went out and got Kaya Altmaier as a utility player from Arizona. Here's the deal with her, CJ. Started 173 games in her career with Arizona, 74 in right field, 18 in left field, 13 in center field, 8 as the designated player. Really productive player for Arizona. And by the way, native of San Diego, went to Patrick Henry High School, same high school that produced Ricky Williams. So Patrick Henry High School has been good to the Longhorns in the past. Kaya Altmaier coming in for softball. And then baseball, the big news over the weekend was Will Gasparino headed into the transfer portal. It looks like UCLA might be his next port of call. But CJ, that along with Tommy Farmer transferring, Max Ballou is going to be a multimillionaire whenever the draft rolls around. Other than Jonah Williams coming back, the outfield is going to be completely remade. But you look at what Texas has attacked in the transfer portal. They've attacked corner outfield and really kind of just outfield in general. They landed Cal Higgins recently. He's the most recent transfer portal pickup as we sit here today, the left-handed pitcher from Western Kentucky. But with Aiden Robbins from Seton Hall, Caleb Freeman from Georgia State, Jack Maroknik from Butler, that's 3 guys that could be outfielders, corner outfielders. Freeman might be able to play some infield a little bit, but CJ, it's a reworked roster for Jim Schlossnagle. but adding those veteran bats, guys that have multiple years of doing it at the Division I level, I like what both programs have done in the portal thus far. Even though, like I said, softball, it's one take, but it's one take that can help you a whole heck of a lot for a roster that's going to return largely intact from winning a national championship.
Yeah, we'll start with softball because that's the whole key, right? Texas softball doesn't need to be a Texas Tech in the portal, right? They're returning a lot from a team that just won the national championship. So you're retaining most of that roster. Of course, with Altmaier, just hit 355, 5 homers, 55 RBIs. That's a pretty good stick to add to a lineup that was already pretty top heavy. So pretty solid outfield addition there. Of course, you mentioned the versatility. Flipping over to Dish Falk Field and some of the new names that will be roaming the field back there. Look, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a lot of new faces, as we talked about with the Texas football offense. The Texas lineup over at the Dish will be basically brand new, save maybe 2 or 3 names, right? How does the Jonah Williams figure into that year 2? Of course, it feels like that entire outfield will be brand new, especially with the departure of a Will Gasparino. Will it be Maroknek? Will it be an Aiden Robbins? What will an Easton Winfield do? Is there room for him in perhaps a developmental year 2 in Austin? That'll be really interesting to see how things play out there. But all in all, Jeff, we've gone over it with Blake on Friday during the Bases Loaded episode. Texas added a lot of guys with a lot of pop and a lot of ability to take extra bags, whether that be through straight steals on the base paths or being able to hit for extra base hits, doubles, triples, home runs. The OPS of 3 of the 4 guys that Texas has added so far, north of 1. That's pretty darn good. And when you consider the arms that Texas is targeting in the portal as well, plus will be retaining, well, you're looking at another year of the arm farm making his money worthwhile in Austin, Texas. And that pickup with the cat out of Western Kentucky, whew, it's quite the addition there.
Only 2 pitchers, Luke Dotson out of Mississippi State and Cal Higgins out of Western Kentucky. But, CJ, they like some of their younger developmental pitchers. So we'll see, a year 2 for a guy like Drew Rarick, year 2 for a guy like Bryce Navarre. Yeah. Does Dylan Volantis go back to the bullpen or do they convert him into a starter? So I think they've got the pieces. I think they feel they've got the pieces. It's just a matter of where are they going to put those pieces? That's for Max Wiener to figure out this summer and for what should be a very, very competitive fall over at Dish Falk. CJ, we'll end up talking some basketball. Miles Turner and the Pacers fall short of winning an NBA title in the finals. Kevin Durant coming back to the state of Texas, traded to the Rockets over the weekend. But the big NBA news as it concerns the Longhorns, the draft coming up on Wednesday, and Trey Johnson. Love that Trey Johnson, CJ. He's going to be a lottery pick and is going to be a very rich man after Wednesday night. What I don't like about it is he's going to a place that, for all intents and purposes, it sounds like basketball purgatory when you look at the options for where he could go. It's the gift and the curse of being a lottery pick, I guess.
Yeah, it's not looking great with the most recent mock drafts going into the NBA draft. Of course, somehow the Mavs lucked into number 1. Cooper Flagg will end up a Maverick, barring something ridiculous once again by Nico Harrison. But point being, after that, for Trey Johnson, it's looking a little hairy, right? We think 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 is in play. And if that's the destinations for Trey Johnson, buckle up, buddy, because you're looking at Charlotte at 4, Utah at 5, Washington at 6, and New Orleans at 7. I don't know which of those 4 you'd prefer to go to. Personally, me, probably New Orleans, but we've seen that it just doesn't matter who they add, how they add them, or what level of player they've got in that organization recently. It just doesn't equate to playoff success. But I don't know about Utah. I don't know about Charlotte. And Washington feels like a place where anybody in the NBA just offloads its salary dump to Washington to make sure that they can continue to progress while Washington remains a 20-win team. So you're right. That bank account will be pretty happy. I don't know if Trey Johnson will be after where he ends up going in this draft.
But let's not put a damper on it, though. Trey Johnson's going in the top 10. So congrats to Trey. Congrats to his family. If you're looking for an NBA comp, CJ, if you're looking at, okay, what could Trey Johnson's future be? I think he could be like, go back to what Michael Redd was before his career-ending knee injury. I think that's the kind of volume scorer with the ability to shoot at a high percentage that Trey Johnson could be. I think best case scenario, he could be Michael Redd, which Michael Redd was an all-star at All-NBA guy before the second knee injury for all intents and purposes ended his career. So I think the whoever gets Trey Johnson is going to be very, very happy that they have him. We'll see how Trey feels about it. But I know he'll make the most of it, whichever NBA organization he lands with. All right, CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it and the entire On Texas Football staff. If you want more from the On Texas Football staff, make sure you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. Make sure you like this video. But more importantly, get over to ontexasfootball.com. Plenty of discussion right now. A lot of information on recruiting, team nuggets, transfer portal. We've got it all over at ontexasfootball.com. Sign up now using the promo code OTFOG. That's OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. You won't want to miss anything, especially with those announcements coming up this week and in early July. Get over right now. Again, the promo code is OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. For CJ Vogel, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this edition of Longhorn Weekly. And until next time, welcome.